Thank you all for joining us today. We will be taking questions at the end, so please feel free to submit those via the Q&A chat at the bottom of your screen. I would like to now turn it over to Bert Brock, one of the attorneys representing this community.
Good evening. Hello, and thank you. My name is Bert Brock, and I'm the founding partner of Bert Brock Law here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm joined by Jeff Reeves, the founding partner of Reeves Law Firm, also in Atlanta. As members of this community ourselves, we are honored to be representing many of you and working with some of the nation's top class action environmental law firms on this case. We have Mark Chalos from Leaf, Caberman, Hyman, and Bernstein. We have Jane Conroy from Simmons, Hanley, and Conroy, and Adam Gomez from Grant and Eisenhower. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeff to share a bit more about why we're here today.
Thanks, Bert. We want to start off by making it clear that we are not here to recruit anyone or pressure you in any way to sign up as a client. There's a lot of information flying around and a lot of confusion, so we want to clarify what the current state of play is and what to expect for next steps. Each member of the community who has been impacted has legal rights, and we want to make sure everyone understands those rights so they don't sign them away. Our intention is to address misconceptions, explain the class action lawsuit, and answer any questions you may have. We'll be taking questions via the chat function, so feel free to drop them below, and we'll get to them as we go or at the end of our short presentation. I'll now turn it over to Jane to explain the rest of the team's background.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Bert. And I just want to say how sorry I am that all of you are going through this. I'm sure this is not how you ever expected to spend a part of your Wednesday night. To give you all a little bit more background about who we are, Adam Gomez, Marcellos, and I have recently helped in the East Palestine. We led the lawsuit in East Palestine, Ohio, which was the site of, you may remember, a rather spectacular train derailment and then uncontrolled burn and chemical release right in the center of town in East Palestine, Ohio. And we were able to achieve, in that case, through filing a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit, $600 million for the residents of East Palestine, which included businesses and households. That was the largest train derailment settlement in history. And we also have partnered up with Bert and Jeff to bring you local expertise in Georgia, because there are very particular laws in Georgia like there were in Ohio. We achieved that result in Ohio because we took significant testimony, we looked into the safety violations, we did extensive sampling and expert analysis of what had happened. And we also have experience in other cases like this. Nothing's really like this, but experience in other disasters like the BP oil spill and the national opioid litigation, which we have spent years securing recoveries for communities across the country. The Norfolk Southern settlement was a very great result, and we are honored that we represent the individuals in East Palestine and we're able to help them move on with their lives, which is really what is at the core of this. And now we will be working with Bert and Jeff to hope to help this community and help them move forward from what has happened. Next, Mark Chalos is going to explain a little bit about what a class action actually is, what the lawsuit even means.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, where for some reason it was in the 30s when I woke up this morning. It was very cold, and it's getting cold again here tonight. So we filed a lawsuit on October 2nd, and we filed it as a class action lawsuit. And you hear sometimes the words class action, and you think, what does that mean? I've heard of those lawsuits, but I'm not really sure exactly how that works in practice, and what does that mean for us? Well, what a class action lawsuit is essentially is a way of leveling the playing field. you have defendants. In this case, you have BioLab. They're owned by a very large billion-dollar corporation. They have other parent corporations. They have big private equity investors. They are hiring the best lawyers that they can buy to come and represent the case, represent them in this case. And they'll do a very good job for them. They will fight hard. This will be something that they try to drag out over the course of years. And what a class action allows you to do is it's not just one person against this big corporation and their very expensive lawyers. It allows you to all come together and share the load. They say many hands make for light work. In this case, that's very true. And that's what class actions do. They level the playing field. So rather, here we've got the entire community, everybody who is impacted, residents, renters, business owners, property owners. We're all coming together to try to make this right and to try to hold the company, if it turns out they did anything wrong, hold them accountable for the damages that they caused. And that's the purpose of a class action. When you get to the end of the class action, you might say, well, what does that mean for us? Are we going to get everybody get the same amount of money? Does everybody get different amounts of money? We don't know the answer to how this case is going to end yet. But if there is a settlement at the end, you would be, your damages would be maybe different from other people. Your neighbors might have not as much damage as you, for example. Businesses may have lost profits. Some businesses lost more profits than others. A class action doesn't mean everybody gets the same amount of money at the end necessarily. It would likely end in some result where people get different amounts of money based on their own individual circumstances. So if you could flip to the next slide, please. You may ask, what should we do? And I know there are a lot of lawyers. I've talked to lots of folks in the community that have had lawyers reach out to them. That's not something anybody on this call would ever do. We don't ever, show up at your door and unannounced or phone you or text you or something without you reaching out to us first. But we've heard that there are lawyers in the community who are, trying to reach out to folks. What I think it's important to remember is that there's no rush to sign up with an attorney. You don't have to do that today. You certainly don't have to do it today on this call. And that's not what we're here for. But you don't have to do it immediately. Lawyers are a valuable part of the process. They can give you advice. They can give you legal advice. They can give you practical advice. But there's not a rush to do that immediately. Number one priority is always take care of your health, take care of your family's health. If you're feeling ill, go to the doctor. You can call the health department. They've got a lot of resources in Rockdale County and in surrounding counties. You don't need to think of lawyers first if you're not feeling well. You should think of doctors and healthcare providers first. If you're thinking about lawyers, what I would encourage you to do is research the law firms. You don't have to sign with the first law firm that shows up, whether it's at your door or on your phone or otherwise. You can research and see who has done these cases in the past. See which firms have the resources, see which firms have gotten the good results in other similar cases. I would encourage you to really, spend some time thinking about who the right lawyers are. I'm not suggesting it's any of us on the call. It may be us on the call, it may not be, but you don't have to sign up just because somebody shows up. And remember, there's not a rush to do anything. We're going to talk at the in a few minutes about sort of what you should do, what comes next, what are the things you need to be thinking about. But before we get to that, just remember, there's not a rush to sign up with lawyers. Speaking of what happens next, Adam Gomez is going to walk us through what you can expect over the coming days and weeks.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Gomez, and I'm with the law firm Grant and Eisenhofer. So there have already been more than a dozen lawsuits that have been filed in federal and state court concerning the BioLab fire. And almost all of them, I believe, are class actions, which Mark just described. What's likely to happen with all of those cases is that they will be grouped together, or what we call consolidated, before a single judge. Right now, they are all assigned to the same judge in the Northern District of Georgia, but they'll be formally consolidated or grouped together in front of the judge so that you have one judge serving as the single oversight or supervision over the life of the case. And that's important because that judge calls balls and strikes, not only for us, the lawyers potentially representing the community, but also for BioLab and its attorneys. In a class action, that judge plays a role not only of, kind of refereeing between the parties, but also making sure that when it comes time to assess any resolution of the case, if there is one, whether the lawyers acted in the best interests of the class, in this case, your community. So having one judge to oversee the cases is of immense benefit and gives the community the security knowing that there's an independent neutral that's there, again, refereeing everything that happens in court. The cases that I just mentioned are the private civil litigation that's been brought within our civil justice system on behalf of the community. But there are other players in what has happened that also have legal rights and may in the future commence litigation against BioLab. These entities are state and local governments, as well as the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Justice on behalf of the United States government. All of those government agencies have their own independent claims for environmental damages, cleanup costs associated with remediation of the facility. And that's why, in part, you see in the community air monitors being set up by EPA and the state equivalent in order to start generating data that not only keeps the community safe by knowing whether or not there are high levels of contaminants in certain areas and then dictating any shelter-in-place orders or the like, but also starting to keep tabs on what the long-term environmental and community health impacts are. Having worked in these cases in the past, as Jane mentioned, most recently in the East Palestine train derailment in Ohio, we intend to work cooperatively with those state, local, and federal governments as they potentially bring their claims, because at the end of the day, we're all rowing in the same direction. It's our job to represent the community and get the community the damages that we can get, or compensation for the damages that we can get in the civil justice system. And it's the government's job to get the damages that it can get as part of the civil justice system. And those two actions proceed side by side. There is a little bit of overlap, but generally speaking, there are distinct claims that they can bring versus what we can bring on behalf of the community. But just because we're working in tandem or cooperatively with these governments that have their own claims doesn't mean that we take everything that they say or all the data that they're generating as gospel. We do our own independent analysis, our own independent sampling, whether it's soil, water, air, testing of debris, in order to come to our own independent conclusions on behalf of the community as to what kind of contaminants have been released, in what levels, and what kind of health impacts or other damages or losses can we see as a result. So while we definitely look to the data that's been generated by these government agencies, we're doing our own homework. We've been in the community for the last week or 10 days with experts and sampling crews going all over Rockdale County and elsewhere in order to start generating that data. And we expect to have it, at least preliminarily, within the next couple of weeks. And that will dictate ultimately how this case goes. Once again, all of this is happening within the context of the lawsuit that's already been filed or lawsuits that have already been filed. And a single judge is going to oversee this and referee any disputes between the parties and ensure that the lawyers who are ultimately working on behalf of the community are doing right by the community and acting in the community's best interests. So that's the way that the process is going to work out, at least as far as our involvement is concerned. Understandably, community members are asking, well, while these cases are playing out in court, what should I be doing? Well, the first thing that community members should be doing is making sure that they're taking care of themselves. And what I mean by that is there have been reports, both our individual clients and documented in the media, of individuals in the community who have experienced acute or short-term health impacts, whether it's headaches, sore throats, itchy eyes, anything of that nature. If there is a concern for your health, short-term or long-term, make sure that you are consulting with your medical professional. It's important that you take care of yourselves. It's important that you take care of your families, and that is certainly the first step in that process. We're lawyers, we're not doctors, we're not in the best position to tell you how to take care of yourselves medically. You should be consulting with your physicians if you have concerns in any of those respects. You should also be taking care of yourselves financially or economically. If you need to relocate because of health concerns and you have the means to do so, you should consider those options. If you need to take or incur extra expenses and again have the means to do so, to change out filters, to clean, deep clean your homes, to do anything of that sort, you should be looking at ways of mitigating any contamination or risk of continued kind of exposure to these chemicals. And I say that you should do that if you have the means to do so, because we understand that this has been foisted onto the community. This has been kind of thrown, the community has been thrown into this situation. And it's not easy to spend the money that needs to be spent in order to take care of yourselves and your family. In that respect, we're aware of BioLab's Community Assistance Center. And we encourage folks to avail themselves or make use of that Community Assistance Center with eyes wide open. What do we mean by that? We mean that we have received assurances from BioLab and its attorneys that there is going to be no attempt to release or settle or waive any claims in exchange for participating in those community assistance programs, and we applaud that. But make sure that you understand, you take the time to read, ask questions about any documents that you receive as part of that program so that you're fully aware of what you're getting and if anything that you're giving up. Part and parcel of that process is also documenting everything that occurs either medically, financially, or at the Community Assistance Center. Medically, you should be getting your medical records. You should be reporting all of your symptoms to your doctors so that those are reflected in your medical records. You should keep receipts of any over-the-counter medications or prescribed medications that you get. As far as in the home, make sure that you're keeping hotel receipts. If you had to throw away food or you had to buy water, receipts for those items. If you go to the Community Assistance Center to seek reimbursement in the way that we just discussed, make sure also that you are making copies of those receipts before you go to the Community Assistance Center. We don't know if BioLab is going to be keeping original copies, making copies on their own, but it's vitally important for the life of the case in order to make sure that you get as much back as possible in restitution and compensation, that you document all of the losses that you've incurred. And there's losses here that are not just financial. It's not just medical bills or over-the-counter expenses. It's also the loss of use and enjoyment of your property. It's the fact that you can't go out at night. It's the fact that kids can't go to school and restaurants aren't open. So what we encourage everyone to do is also to keep some form of documentation of their symptoms, of their diagnoses, of being displaced or relocated, something that will serve in the future to jog your memory about what this experience was like. You can do that in the form of a journal. You can do that in a notes app on your phone. You can do that just by marking down bullet points on a calendar. This is going to be the information, the data that ultimately is used, as Mark said, to differentiate between individuals who have had the same type of experience, but the degree or the severity of that experience has varied from person to person or neighbor to neighbor. It's possible that in the course of the case, that information could be turned over to BioLab as part of what we call litigation discovery. So keep that in mind, but it certainly shouldn't discourage you from documenting and keeping a record of your experience. Once again, just before I turn this back over to Jane, I want to stress the importance of making sure that you take care of yourselves. There's no rush to sign with a lawyer. that should not be the first priority. Taking care of yourselves and your family should be the first priority. There are resources available for you to do that, whether it's the assistance center that we just talked about, or the Rockdale Health Department, in order to get information about potential healthcare providers who can help give you information about any health risks or symptoms that you're experiencing. But whatever you do, make sure that you're keeping documentation. Again, medical records, receipts, photos of anything that you've captured as far as your experience. This is all extremely helpful when it comes time to build the individual claim down the road. And ultimately, if there is a class action settlement, receiving your allotment or your portion of that settlement. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jane.
Thanks, Adam. You know, and I would mention one easy way to do that is just using your phone to take a picture even of receipts or things that you see, debris, anything in your house that's concerning you. That's a very easy way to document what you're seeing and what your family is going through. Adam spoke a little bit about the community center that BioLab is opening or has opened. And there may be many things flying around the community. I would urge you to carefully read anything that you are given, and to especially be careful if you're asked to sign something. Now, if you receive some sort of reimbursement from BioLab, you may likely be asked to sign something just to show that you did in fact receive some compensation of some sort. Read very carefully what they're asking you to sign. As Adam said, we've received assurances from defense counsel for BioLab that they are not trying to trick anybody. They are not trying to get you to release your rights, but it's still good practice to review anything carefully before you sign it. And if you have any questions, reach out to someone, reach out to us, and we can help you through that and let you know whether or not it looks like a good idea to sign it. One thing to keep in mind, if you receive money from BioLab and down the road there is a settlement, the amount that you received could be deducted from what you receive in the settlement. We don't know what that would look like, but you should just be aware that that's a possibility. Again, questions, reach out to our team or any other attorney that you trust to talk about it. I also want to tell you to be very careful if someone wants to come on your property and wants to do some testing. We're not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you should know who they are, what they're going to be doing. There's no rush, so you can take the time to call us or your attorney or someone that you trust to talk about it. If someone, and it could be BioLab, but it could be someone else, wants to remove anything from your property, again, we would advise you to contact us or contact someone you trust. Take pictures with your phone of what it is that BioLab or someone else would like to remove from your property. We have, with the court, we are working on preservation protocols, so there will be very strict guidelines about what can be removed, what needs to be retained, how long it needs to be retained, that sort of thing. That will be coming in the next few days. But if you are asked questions or if someone wants to come on your property and do something, it's a clue for you to be really sure what's going on and to take pictures and to document it. Put it in your calendar, put it in your notes function on your phone, make a note in a journal, because it's hard to say. It looks like everything is pretty easy to remember right now, but 6 or 8 months from now, things can get jumbled and it may be difficult to remember whether, exactly what day it was, or you remember that it was a Tuesday, but you're not sure what week in October. So it's really important to write things down. The next thing I want to talk to you about is, we've talked a bit about what you should do as an individual or your household, whether you're renting, visiting, you own a home, whether, what your children are going through, that sort of thing. but business owners have a little bit different issues that they need to address. If you've had to shut down temporarily, we suggest that you contact your insurance carrier. Even if you didn't have to shut down, you should probably still, to be safe, if you're a business owner, contact your insurance owner, get that claim on file. You may even recover something from the insurance carrier, and that would be a good thing if that happens, and it will be sorted out later with respect to whatever settlement we may be able to achieve from BioLab. The other thing I want to say is, if you have a business, try to operate it as normally as you can. Try to keep your business alive and moving forward, because that will be important to show that you tried to do that, even though you may have had significant challenges given what has happened. And again, document the types of troubles that you're having and the challenges you're seeing with your business. And it's difficult to do it, and it's a lot of information that we're giving you. So there's no issue. Contact us at any time. You can reach out to us. We have a website that we've set up. We will have, there's an email there where we can be reached, and we will answer questions. And if it looks like there are very specific issues that need to be addressed, we will have another one of these webinars so that we can hear what is happening over the next couple of weeks that may be different than what we're expecting right now this week. And we'll be updating our website as we hear about different things that may be gone, that may be happening. If we hear that the EPA is doing something a little bit different with sampling or testing, we will put that on the website and let people know so that they're not startled by it. So I think, Stephanie, if you want to field some questions, that might be helpful, and we'll do our best to answer you.
Yeah, absolutely. The first question we've gotten are, what are the health effects that people should be kind of expecting from this pollution?
So I can take that. So there's two groups or categories of health effects that are associated with these kinds of chemicals. The first are acute or short term, and that's what I've discussed earlier. Headaches, sore throat, itchy eyes, runny nose, things of that nature. Those have been seen over the last couple of weeks and may continue to be seen in the community while there's remediation efforts at the site and additional plumes or chemicals are stirred up. That's part of why the shelter-in-place orders exist. And I saw a question as to why they exist at night and not during the day. And that has to do with kind of the way the science behind how these chemicals are dispersed through the air. When the temperature is cooler at night, chemicals don't rise up into the atmosphere. Instead, they spread out horizontally. So you're more likely to have a wider geographic area that's impacted at ground level during the nighttime as opposed to during the day. That's the same reason why you see that fog or that haze starting around dusk. As far as long-term effects, there are a number of different health concerns that are associated with these chemicals. But it's not just any exposure to these chemicals causes these long-term or chronic health conditions. Instead, these conditions are tied to a certain amount or concentration of exposure over a specific period of time. And we don't have any data yet to understand just how much of these chemicals have been released, in what concentrations, in what areas, and how long have or will people in the community be exposed. So if someone is making statements about long-term health effects at this point in time without any data, you have to take that with a grain of salt. This information has to be reviewed not only by environmental engineers, but by toxicologists, epidemiologists, medical doctors, in order to understand how do we take all of these different factors and then quantify what the future health risk is for certain types of diseases.
Thank you. The next question is, who all is included in this lawsuit?
Okay, I can answer that. So we don't know yet what the lawsuits will ultimately look like in terms of what the geographic area and which categories of folks will be included. But the lawsuit that we filed includes all of the homeowners and renters and businesses in a geographic area that's 50 miles from the ground zero where the fire happened. That's probably overly inclusive. The plume has spread out as far as that potentially, but as we go forward and we analyze the data, both from testing and meteorological data, the weather data, and we understand exactly how far this toxic plume has spread, that will be refined. So generally speaking, the closer you are to where the release happened, the more impact you will have, both in terms of the amount of chemicals and the length of your exposure, like Adam was talking about. And as you get farther away, the chemicals tend to disperse more. And, there's probably less of an impact as you get farther away. But that's what we're analyzing right now. Right now, if you're in the near area, say 5 to 10 miles, I think you'll more than likely be included as the case goes forward. But we're just that's one of the piece of information that we just don't yet know. And it's gonna take further scientific analysis to really nail that down.
Thank you. The next question is, what will each individual person get from the lawsuit?
Well, I guess I can take that. Or Jane, do you want to do that?
Sure. I think what I would say right now is we don't know yet what each individual person will get. So much depends on how they're situated in the community. As Mark said, how close are they to the fire? Do they own a home? Do they rent? Do they have children in the home with them? It all depends on what the situation is. It's also going to depend as we develop this case and we learn exactly why this happened and who's responsible. That will make a difference too with respect to the amount of the total recovery before you even get to determining what each individual receives from that total recovery.
Thank you. Next question was about hiring an independent tester to test residential properties and if those results will be shared.
I think I can answer that. So as part of the work, there's going to be a lot of testing, probably. EPA will do testing, state regulators will do testing. We are not going to rely on that. We don't rely on that. We haven't relied on that in our other cases. That is what it is, and they're entitled to do that under law, and they're going to do that. What we would do is, in this case, and we've already started this process, is we're going to hire experts to do individual testing in public areas and in our clients' areas, and that will be part of what goes into the litigation. Now, whether that gets disclosed to the public or not is ultimately going to be the court's decision to make. It's not our decision. And at this point, we don't know what the court's going to decide, if anything, on that. It's just one of those unknown variables at this point. But if the court allows us to release it and there's no court order that says we can't, and there's no other reason we can't, then I would expect we would. If there's a court order that says we can't, then we won't. We're going to do what the court tells us.
Thank you. Will there be one law firm that represents the citizens, or will there be multiple firms?
I can take that. Again, much will depend on how the court would like this to proceed. In other cases of this size, it's typically been a team of various law firms that have expertise in the areas that are required to, do the best we can for the community. So I think many of us believe it will be a team of lawyers, which would mean, 4, 5, 6, maybe more law firms that would all be working for the community. But the court makes that decision of how the case will be run and who would be leading, whether it would be one law firm or several working together. So that's, again, something we need to wait for the court.
Thank you. How feasible is it that folks will be able to get other relief besides monetary compensation, given the track record at BioLab?
If I understand that question, I think the question is, other than monetary relief, would it be possible to impose more safety restrictions or other types of relief? I think that's what the question is with respect to BioLab. That's certainly something we can work toward. Typically, that's something that governmental organizations or the EPA has more power, more ability to force a company to potentially change the way they do business, or what type of restrictions or safety materials they need to have in place. We obviously work toward exposing violations and areas where they need to do better and to be more protective of the community, but we don't often in a civil suit have the ability to force that on a company. But lawsuits do change the behaviors of companies, and we are working, as Adam said, we are cooperating with Georgia and the EPA and the Department of Justice and the National EPA and Department of Health in Rockdale County. And so I think everyone is looking to be sure that this company is safer in the future, for sure. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that, or that wasn't quite the question.
No, I think that was a question, Jane. I do have one thing to add. It's important for community members to understand that this class action, the private class action brought on behalf of the community, is just one piece of the puzzle in regulating corporate behavior. Our civil justice system, for better or for worse, generally only allows in a private civil lawsuit on behalf of the community to recover monetary damages, right? To the extent that there's a way of changing the company's behavior, that is typically, as Jane said, brought by the government. And that's why I referenced earlier the fact that there's different lawsuits that are going to proceed in parallel, all as pieces to the same puzzle. But we also can't forget that behind all of this is the legislature, right? Whether it's state or federal. And it's important for the community to be in touch with their representatives, because at the end of the day, it's the laws that BioLab has to, and any company has to adhere to. And if those laws aren't on the books, then it's difficult to regulate behavior in the future. So we can only do our part. The law only allows us to get monetary damages generally, but there's a lot more behind this. And we're going to work cooperatively with all of those different streams to try and affect the most amount of change we can for the community.
Thank you. Someone mentioned that their wife is 7 months pregnant, and that OB told them to reconsider returning home, and wanted to know if you have any advice on some independent testing so they feel comfortable returning home.
So that's probably more a medical question than a legal question. We're lawyers. We think we know everything, but we actually don't. So if that person who has asked that question wants to contact us, we can discuss, and give you some thoughts on what companies to hire if you want to hire and pay for independent testing. But in terms of whether you should return home, that's a decision that you'll have to make along with your doctors and your family. I don't think we have any legal advice. There's no legal reason you should return home as opposed to not returning home. I wouldn't think of it in terms of what's better for my lawsuit. I'm not suggesting that's what you're doing, but first and foremost, take care of yourselves and your family's health.
Can I add one thing, Mark, to that? If there are community members who are doing independent testing, what I mean by that is hiring or allowing an independent party, not a lawyer, not BioLab, not the EPA, to come in and do testing on their property. Make sure that you're insisting as a condition of allowing them to do that testing or paying them for that testing, that you get the full results. that you don't just get a portion of those results or an excerpt of those results, or the testing is done and then you never hear from the tester. Make sure that you are doing your research on any independent company that you hire or that you give permission to outside of a lawyer or the EPA or BioLab, anything along those lines.
You know what, I would just add, it was one thing that might be useful to the community. If anyone is changing their filters in their HVAC systems or exhausts for stoves or anything like that, or if someone comes to your home and asks you for those filters, you know, document that. But if you are changing them yourself, keep them, put them in a plastic bag and keep them. Don't destroy them.
Thanks. What is the advantage of a class action versus an individual lawsuit?
Okay, I can take that. So as I mentioned earlier, class action allows a group of people to come together to take on a defendant that might have more money, more influence, more, great lawyers, more resources to fight the case. If you do it individually and it's, Mr. and Mrs. Smith versus the big company, well, they're going to have to pay their lawyer somehow, whether it's up front or at the end. They're going to have to pay the costs individually for all of these experts to prove the case in court. And that can be very expensive. If it's a class action, the group of people that may be hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people, all of those costs are spread across the group. So, if you have to pay an expert, it costs $20,000. If you're doing that alone, you have to pay $20,000 to that expert. If you're doing it with 20,000 people, then everybody pays $1 to the expert. So it's a way to spread the cost. It's a way to increase the, level the playing field and increase the, on one side, the resources and the strength on the side of the community. So that's really the biggest advantage. These companies, and I'm not singling out BioLab, but companies in general only speak dollars and cents, and anything you can do to equalize that equation is better and gives you a better chance of holding them accountable and getting justice ultimately. Let me just say one other thing about the class action mechanism. Under the rules, class actions, if you don't want to be part of it, you don't have to be. You can always opt out of a class action. So if you think you're involved and you're within the definition of the proposed class, I would live 5 miles away, for example, from where this happened, and you say, I don't like these lawyers, I don't like the way they've done this or that, I don't like the settlement at the end, it's not enough money, I want more money. You always have the right to opt out of the settlement and get out of it. And then you have your own rights then to file your own lawsuit, go hire your own lawyers, file your own lawsuit. You don't have to be part of it against your will ever. And that's one of the features of a class action. So if you don't like it, you don't have to be part of it. And you're certainly not going to hurt anybody's feelings, and you can go your own way. So that's one of the advantages of a class action.
Thank you. Can minors sign up for the class action, or is it per household?
Well, minors, first of all, nobody has to sign up for the class action. If you're within the area that ultimately gets approved as a class, then you're in it. So nobody has to affirmatively sign up. Whether minors will recover money at the end is a question we don't know the answer to, because we don't know if anybody's going to recover money at the end. But for example, in East Palestine, that settlement ultimately resulted in a payment to the household that factored in whether there were minors, and there was money that was ultimately apportioned for the minors. But minors, and particularly minors that are injured, will, hopefully, depending how this case ends, have a right to recover as well. We're not going to nobody's going to hand minors money, though. So if that's the concern, that's not going to happen. It'll be protected for them if there's money at the end.
Thank you. What is the cost to sign up with you guys or be represented by this group of attorneys?
Well, up front, zero. And if any lawyers are asking you for money, be very skeptical about that. Lawyers should not be asking you for money up front, something that the lawyers on this call will never do. And nobody really ought to be doing that. But there's no money required to participate, certainly in the class action. Ultimately, the way the lawyers get paid, which I've heard that question before, the way lawyers get paid in these kind of cases is if we go do the case, we litigate it, we take, under oath questioning, they call them depositions, we review their documents from the company, we hire experts, we do all that stuff on our dime, we advance the costs, we advance our time, nobody's paying us for that. And at the end of the case, if there's any money, we would go to the court as part of the settlement and say to the court, here's the result that we've gotten for this community. And we think it's good for these reasons. And we're asking the court then to approve a fee for our time that we've spent. And we ask the court to approve reimbursement of the expenses. And the court has the option to say yes or no, or I think it's too much, I want to reduce it, or I think it's too little, let me give you more money. But at the end of the day, we only get paid if there's a positive outcome at the end where there's money for the community, and if the court agrees that we've done our job and we've done it well and deserve to get paid for it. If not to any of those three, we get $0.
Thank you. How would someone selling their home and moving affect their ability to participate in the litigation?
I can take that. It's a little bit uncertain now, but if you own a home right now and you are able to sell your home and you move away, then there would be an analysis. You were there when this occurred, and there would be an analysis of whether when you sold your house, it was worth less than it was worth before the fire. And so all of that would be taken into consideration. There would be, as we said earlier, you need to live your life. So if you decide to sell your home or to move and find another place to live, that's what you should do. But it may have an impact in the lawsuit just by the reality of the situation. As I said, if, for example, your house was worth less than it was worth before the fire, then that would be part of your damages that we would assert that you would have received more money had you sold your house before the fire, and when you sold afterwards, it was worth less.
Thank you. And this might be a question best for Bert or Jeff, but someone asked about how to get this considered a state of emergency and what steps might be possible there kind of on the local level.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, of course. Someone just raised how to gain traction to get this considered a state of emergency and what other, potential avenues there are on the local level.
I think continued pressure politically will help drive that objective. I think that process has started. I think people are engaging and speaking to their local representatives. I think they've engaged their state representatives as well. So I think continue to press your local representatives and state representatives will give people the best opportunity to get that designation granted. But it definitely is a political objective, and it's something they need to continue working with the representatives to effectuate.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think Bert is absolutely right. There are various groups at the state level that have conducted sessions and hearings and are actively trying to figure out how to best serve the community at the state level. I'm very, very much aware of what's taking place there. But to Bert's point, contact your state representatives, contact your local representatives, and they work for you all. So you all press that issue if that's a concern, and you want these people that you put in office to take action.
Thank you both. Have class representatives been identified for the class action lawsuit yet?
Some have. We filed our case, and we filed it on behalf of a business owner there are other cases on file where they've identified some other potential class representatives. There will probably be a process where the court asks for all of those cases to be put into one document. And as part of that, we'll probably take another look at that, and it will probably be maybe some additional class representatives depending on some legal questions and some factual questions. So the short answer is yes, some have. There might be others as well.
Thank you. If you signed up with a personal injury attorney separate from this group, will you still be included in the class action, and will that have any impact on your case?
I can take that. If you're signed up, you would be included in the class action. There'll be, as we say, when the court is more involved, and when Mark was talking about the possibility of a single complaint being formulated from many of the complaints that have been filed, you would be a part of that as well. So everything would be under the guidance of the court. And you would be a part of if the judge approves a class action and you're within the area of the class, even if you have a personal injury lawsuit filed, you could be, if you wanted to be, considered part of the class.
Thank you. Someone else asked about if you need to sign any document or specific documentation to participate in the class action lawsuit with your firm.
No, you don't need to do anything to be included in the class. We've provided, or we will provide an email address where you can email to that. I mean, if you want to hire us to represent you, any of the folks on this call, you're certainly able to do that, and you can call us or reach out to us, and we can see if we can help, but you don't have to. And we don't want to suggest that we're the only lawyers that know what we're doing. There are plenty of good lawyers out there, but we're here to answer questions. The email address, you can email us and ask us questions. If you want to hire us to represent you, you can also have that discussion with us as well. But if you're within the area immediately around the release and within a certain number of miles, which right now it's 50, it'll probably be less ultimately, then if there is a class, you'll likely be included in that. But this is evolving. This is moving fairly quickly. I would say I wouldn't just say, well, they said I'm included and now I can move on with my life and not pay any attention to this. I would suggest you continue to monitor the situation, continue to watch the news. You can always, we have a website up that we're going to post the important documents. So stay tuned in, but you don't need to do anything affirmative to be part of any class action.
Thank you. I want to be mindful of folks' time, so we'll just take a couple more here. Should I let BioLab clean up my property?
Adam, that seems like a question for you.
So I think it depends on the circumstances of the cleanup, right? If it's some limited debris and you document that debris, you take photos, videos, write down when you first saw it, keep a description, take the information of the folks that come from BioLab to pick it up. It might make sense for you to take advantage of that program that BioLab is offering. On our part, we are working with BioLab on an agreement whereby they will preserve or keep all of that debris that is removed from community members' properties so that it can be tested and potentially used as evidence in the case. If it's more extensive, if there's some unique type of debris, or if you have specific concerns, I would suggest reaching out to one of us or to another lawyer to discuss those circumstances and get specific advice about whether or not you want to have it handled by an independent party or you want to use the BioLab program. But regardless of what you choose to do, again, make sure that you're documenting it. At the end of the day, this is evidence. It's evidence of potential contamination, and it's evidence of just how far or widespread these effects are being felt.
Great, thank you. And the last question is, what should folks expect in terms of next steps in the litigation?
Do you want to take that, Mark?
Sure. So like I said, we filed our case a few weeks ago. There are other cases that have been filed. There'll continue to be other cases, I think, probably getting filed. The court is going to organize the litigation probably in the coming weeks to where she decides who is going to be in charge of the case, what the next steps legally will be. We're still very, very early in the litigation. Let me say in the East Palestine case, from the date of the derailment to the date of final approval of the settlement was about 18 months. In the world of lawsuits, that is lightning speed. Doesn't sound like it. 18 months sounds like a very long time, but ordinarily cases go on for years and years. This team in front of you today is the team that was in significant part responsible for moving that case as fast as it went. That involved us sometimes having lawyers in 4 different places on a day, doing these sworn under oath questionings called depositions. It involved a tremendous amount of work over a very short period of time. We lost a lot of nights and weekends doing that, but it was important to get money into the community as quickly as possible. So I expect what will happen here is the judge will call everybody into court. We'll make some decisions about how we go forward. And then we'll get into that fact-finding process where we're going to get into the facility to gather evidence. We're going to have experts see what was going on in there to make some decisions about whether we think the company did something wrong. It certainly seems like they did, but we can't decide that until we get our consultants to look at it and experts in this area. And then from there, the judge will decide if there's going to be a class as a class action or not. And then either we'll resolve the case and by a settlement, or we'll go to a trial. And that's certainly possible. And if that's the case, we're certainly prepared to do that. In terms of what you all need to do at this point from the litigation standpoint, everything that Jane suggested earlier and Adam suggested earlier in terms of, sort of minding your own situation and getting, keeping your information, keeping your dates, keeping your diary in whatever form that takes, gathering the evidence, if there is evidence on your property, taking photos and that sort of thing, and just stay tuned. I know that sounds like a cliche, but watch this website. Like I said, you can always email to us, and we can let you know what's going on. But if it turns out we're the lawyers in charge of the case, we will certainly keep the community apprised. We will do periodic webinars like this. We will have websites with the information, and we will stay in touch.
And I will just add to that, we will move this case very aggressively. That's what we did in East Palestine because it's so important to the community, which means we will be setting up and getting ready for a trial. And if the case resolves, it resolves if that looks like the right thing to do. But when we file a lawsuit, we anticipate a trial. And that's what we will be establishing testimony for and gathering evidence for and doing all the work with experts to move the case quickly. And we have every reason to believe that the court will also want to move this case quickly.
Great, thank you. Like I said, we want to be mindful of everyone's time. So if you have further questions or want more information, please reach out using the contact form at the website on the screen. Thank you all for attending the town hall, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Right.